Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the best movies of the first 4 months of 2016. The main reason I do a list, which sounds unusual, to do a list of the best movies of the first 4 months of the year, is because I always do a best of the summer list, which most people do, and best of the year and worst of the year, but this time period always gets forgotten. I have never really liked that. I mean, certainly people do like best of the first 6 months, but then that kind of bleeds into summer, so that gets confusing. And I don't really want to do a best of the first 6 months. That's dumb. So I'd much rather isolate this season from the summer and just talk about that, because we always usually have some like really great movies that come out at this time. We don't really get to talk about this season as a whole. I know it's like January and February, March and April are not the greatest in terms of cinematic releases, but I still think there's enough notable ones to talk about what the best releases were, and so that's why I make this list. And I like making lists to recommend films to people. I like turning people on to new and different kinds of films, so if you are someone who is looking for recommendations on Netflix or whatever streaming service or on demand or whatever, these are 5 films I definitely recommend that have come out this year so far in 2016. Of course, I am not counting Captain America Civil War, as that is part of the summer movie season. I'm not really counting Nerdland, even though it wouldn't have made it on this list anyway, but it hasn't officially been released. So I think I've seen about 18 2016 movies, and of those 18, these are the best of the best, basically. There were some runners-up, not a ton, but there were some runners-up of 2016 that I didn't include on this list, but were still pretty good, and I'll probably maybe watch again, maybe not, I don't know. But they are definitely good enough for me to consider to be runners-up. So honestly, I just thought of what the films were the best. I didn't think of turning people onto movies. I was like, these are what I like the most, so this is it. I don't know. So I hope you enjoy this list. It's really kind of not in any order, but I know people kind of don't like that. So let's put numbers on it anyway. Fuck it. Who cares? All right. So number 5, The Witch. Strange, atmospheric, unnerving, unforgettable horror movie experience, and that's really what makes it so surprising. You don't see horror movies that owe more to Bergman and period specificity than jump scares. It doesn't really have any jump scares. It's there to unnerve you and give you nightmare fuel and think about how fucked up the 17th century was, while also having a feeling of the supernatural from a bygone era, which somehow feels even creepier and like you're getting lost and cursed into a tomb that you can possibly never get out of because it's been buried and forgotten. The Witch is definitely one of the horror masterpieces of this era, and a horror film that people are going to discuss the simple filmmaking of for a long time. A lot of multiplex horror films in particular are almost like cheap beer, and The Witch comes along as like a finely aged whiskey that most people, if they drank it, they go, bah, I can't deal with this. Number 4, 10 Cloverfield Lane. There's some debate over whether this was just titled that to get people to see a nice little indie thriller, because they would if it's a sequel to Cloverfield with a recognizable name rather than just called The Cellar or Valencia. Either way, it's probably because they thought it would make more money. It's not really connected at all, and maybe it says something about franchise filmmaking, because frankly, I don't think I would have necessarily seen this movie if everything that happened with the trailer and the hubbub about it had happened. So maybe in some ways it's a mini victory, because this is actually a really cool small indie thriller that definitely pulls you in and gets you so into it. You're just moving from one tense scene to another, just kind of like gripped and so into what's going on in this bunker, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead's attempts to get out of it and try to figure out what exactly is going on, whether they're telling the truth or not. It's such a fun, thrilling theatrical experience. Certainly, I actually think a lot better than the original Cloverfield, with like this tense music and kind of like a Twilight Zone-y kind of Richard Matheson type of vibe to the whole thing that really gets you in, but is also really intriguing. It's probably one of the few thrillers that you keep wanting to pick away at this mystery, and 10 Cloverfield Lane actually benefits quite a bit from that mystery, and the mystery works with the thriller itself. Something that works really well about 10 Cloverfield Lane that didn't actually work in the original Cloverfield is that you're really invested in all these characters. You pretty much only see 3 characters, and you get to know them really well. You care about them. You don't know their entire life story, but what little you do know about them, you're really connected to them as an audience. It matters a lot more in a thriller if you actually care about your characters. That's something that Hitchcock knew, it's something that Spielberg knew, and it's something that this movie knows as well. And even The Twilight Zone also, is that if you care about these characters, you're going to care if something actually happens to them. It made me want to get into it. Every time I'd start to question something, there was a new mystery, and I was right back in it. It understands what information we need for the mystery and how that helps the mystery play along. It does feel like an Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and it shows how cool Hollywood can be when all that hype feeds into a great mystery kind of thriller. And that's really the success of 10 Cloverfield Lane. You can sit back and go, well, let's see what this mystery really has to offer, and actually get involved in a mysterious thriller is something I don't think I've seen Hollywood really do in a very long time, and never do this successfully. Number 3, Hail Caesar. When Hollywood makes a movie about itself, it almost has to do it in a big Hollywood way. It's almost like Hollywood fantasy can't be done without being made in a very Hollywood fantasy way. It's like they can't accept it because that's how it's been presented to them originally. And the Coen brothers kind of continue that tradition with Hail Caesar, but of course they do it in the fantasy of what they want Hollywood to be, of the classic studio system, or at least how it was in the 50s. You can tell they're having fun with that fantasy. They're using it as fantasy and doing a big Hollywood movie about Hollywood in the way that Hollywood likes to do it. The Coen brothers usually do with the period pieces, have a lot of fun with it, but I feel like in this one they have more fun than they've had with Inside Llewyn Davis or True Grit. It's them really playing with the classic Hollywood studio system. This is a movie about classic Hollywood made by classic Hollywood film dorks. It just takes out all the little interesting things they like about classic Hollywood and make, their own made-up studio. Is still very much a Hollywood movie, but it's capturing Hollywood. And that's an odd idea that Hollywood movies always have, and Hail Caesar very much does. But it's like they're all self-aware about it, but it almost feels like Hail Caesar is extra self-aware about what it's doing, and extra self-aware about what it's saying about these certain types of movie stars and that type of studio. And I always find that interesting. It's like Hollywood can't let you fully in. They want you to believe the fantasy of it. And it's like someone like the Coen brothers did it in the most Hollywood way, but it's kind of interesting because there's certain sequences in this movie that if you've seen the advertising in the trailer, you probably thought were something someone was filming on a set during the movie, and it isn't. That's the whole kind of interesting idea of it. They're playing in this Hollywood world, but they can't not show it as a Hollywood movie. But I also think the thing with this movie is that this movie hits my certain demographic pretty hard. I'm someone who likes classic Hollywood. I like the Coen brothers, and I noticed most of the audience in the theater was not as into this film as much as I was, and I can't really speak on what it's like to watch a film about classic Hollywood. It's a subject I'm quite interested in. Most of the people maybe seeing this aren't as familiar with classic Hollywood. They might just know Wizard of Oz and a few others. They don't really love it that much. From my perspective, I really liked it. I think it was probably their best comedy since Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Number 2, Zootopia. A bunny in a society ruled by animals who have become anthropomorphic and live in this city, Zootopia, and she's become the first bunny detective and solving a mystery. Certainly it's about that, but it's also about racial relations and how we deal with race in 2016, surprisingly enough. It's a lot more of a political film than you'd really expect from Disney animation, and I think that's kind of what makes it really exciting. It's exciting to see an animated film, and especially a mainstream big budget animated film, and have them combined ideas that pretty much a modern audience wouldn't see normally unless it's wrapped up in this package. And Zootopia does that actually very well, and even the terms they use are very similar. It almost feels like there's not much subtext to it. It's just flat out saying it, and it's surprising that Disney frankly let them get away with it. If you think of a safe studio, you almost think of Disney automatically, and Zootopia isn't really a safe movie at all. It's structured like a safe movie. It's structured like a big animation blockbuster, and it has a lot of the tropes of those, so you could just simply watch this as a basic big animated movie, but it then still also has all this stuff about race within it. So it's actually very interesting. It's almost like it's trying to sneak all that in. Certainly a great thing about Zootopia is what it does is it takes kind of the former kind of, genre or kind of films like 48 Hours or In the Heat of the Night. I'm mainly thinking about 48 Hours with this, but basically you'd have these cop dramas where you'd have a black police officer and a white police officer working together and working through their racial social relations to solve this mystery. And Zootopia reminds me a lot of those. The thing is you couldn't really do that now. If you watch 48 Hours, you'd probably be shocked by a lot of the language. You couldn't do that now. People would completely flip out using that sort of language. And what Zootopia does great with what it's doing is it basically makes one of those, but with animals instead of people. And that almost makes it so much richer, because I've kind of missed those films. They felt riskier. They felt like they were taking on something about race. It's just surprising they would make a film like this. I don't know if they tricked the suits or something like that. It's an incredibly complex film for a movie about a cute little bunny detective. I didn't expect the bunny detective movie to make me think about race in America, but I think that's also why animation is awesome, because you can say things that people aren't expecting and they'll listen to it. Probably one of the most dangerous and liberal animated films since the Lego movie. And it's kind of cool that we live in a time where mainstream big blockbuster animation is trying to make you think and make you think about bigger ideas than you really expect movies to do. And so this is the big one, the film that I guess at least so far I think is kind of the best of the year, probably a film that'll be considered in that, and frankly I think the best film I've seen in 2016 thus far, and that is Green Room. It's one of those perfect action genre films that is so precise and so good you kind of can't believe it's real. And while I was watching Green Room, I was absolutely sure it's one of the best action movies I've seen in a really long time, and definitely of 2016 so far, but I doubt very much in 2016 will actually top this. But not just a great genre thing or something you can see on VOD or something like that. Green Room really shows that when an action movie's done well, it can really elevate itself to high art. It really was one of the few times I've seen a genre film that just perfectly gets what a great action film can be. There's a geography to it. There's a real tenseness to it. It's real purposefully and precisely directed in a way that you don't see from many action directors. It's a survival movie that keeps surprising you and it keeps hitting you. Green Room is one of the best cinematic surprises I've seen in a really long time, and a cinematic surprise I'm very happy to have experienced. I really haven't seen somebody understand the building blocks of action and be able to use them as well as Jeremy Saulnier really does. And he does remind me a lot of John Carpenter in Assault on Precinct 13, but instead of cops versus faceless criminals, it's skinheads versus punks. Kind of like a protect the fort kind of western where the Indians are going to attack the fort. And I guess, you know, punks and skinheads are the same thing as cowboys and Indians if you think about it, sort of. And just kind of accepting how good it is and not really thinking about how mind-blowing it is to see a movie this good in this current climate. This is what I want action movies to be. This is the kind of tenseness, the surprising nature of the whole thing, not really knowing where you're going to come out, but also the screenplay felt very Hollywood. Honestly, seeing this film, I could see Jeremy Saulnier doing a big Hollywood movie, but keeping his edge as a director. He's not the kind of guy who couldn't make a really good Hollywood movie. He is the guy who can make a really good Hollywood movie, but he's also one of the best directors we have around today. That he can combine these worlds, like very anti-social punk music, the whole idea of like fighting a bunch of white supremacist skinheads, but the way he does it feels like a very well-made Hollywood genre film, and that's something that I think is just so surprising about this movie. But if you're really getting down to it and talking about filmmaking, this is the kind of craftsman level genre filmmaking that I wish more directors understood, and very few of them ever will, sadly. Green Room is a tense action movie experience that if you don't experience an action movie like this, and this isn't an action movie for you, then I'm pretty sure you probably won't be into action movies for very long, or you just have real crap taste. This is the kind of movie that gives me faith in action movies and movies in general and just the future of cinema. So that was my list of the best movies of the first 4 months of 2016. I hope you've enjoyed them. I hope you get to check these movies out. I think they're all really recommendable. Hail Caesar I think might be a little weirder for most people, but I really liked it and it's my list, so whatever, you know. I'm sure most people will be like, why wasn't Deadpool on here? But I didn't like Deadpool as much as everyone else, so that's kind of why. Sorry. I mean, I liked it, I just wasn't as fanatical, I guess, about it. And Batman and Superman, was released, but Norm of the North was the fucking worst. Anyway, I think it's been a pretty good year, cinematic year so far, especially with something like Zootopia, which I don't think anyone thought it could be as good as it was, and such a great genre film like Green Room. And we've had a lot of really cool small movies and a lot of really cool big movies. And really, I always recommend this, but see different kinds of films, because you'll end up seeing a lot of better films because of it. If you only see one kind of film, unless they're having like a great period of that certain movie, most likely you'll end up seeing a bunch of shit. But if you jump around, you'll be able to see a lot better stuff and really have a growing appreciation for cinema, and that definitely helps. And I think this list reflects that. I've had a really good time going to the movies in 2016 so far. I hope the summer can at least live up to this. I don't know, since I've only seen Civil War at this point, but we'll see. Who knows? It could be worse. It could be better. I think it'll be better. Well, now I have doubts. I don't know. Oh well. So if you have seen any of the films that I picked for the best movies of the first 4 months of 2016, then talk about them below, or leave your own list of what you thought the best movies of the first 4 months of this year were, or at least so far for you. Thank you very much for watching, and subscribe if you would like to.